Welcome to the Moms I Know with Sheila Walsh-Dunton and Maria Anderson-Farner. Two moms on a mission to reclaim childhood and take you from surviving to thriving on your parenting journey.
The most precious gift we can offer others is our presence. When mindfulness embraces those we love, they bloom like flowers. From Thich Nhat Hanh.
Hi, this is Maria.
And this is Sheila.
And we want to welcome you to the Moms I Know. Today on our podcast, we are interviewing a friend of mine, Grace Kendrick. And I'm so excited to have you here today, Grace. We're really looking forward to hearing more about you, the work that you do, and the way in which you're working with mothers in your community and beyond. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very thrilled to be here. It's my favorite conversation.
I want to read just a little bit about you, and then I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay.
Grace is a holistic health coach specializing in Ayurveda, yoga, and mindfulness, the founder of Mindful Mama Yoga and Ayurveda. She's the owner of Grass Valley Yoga. As a busy mom and stepmom, she understands the challenges of balancing the raising of children and radical self-care. Her practice is focused on helping moms at every age and stage navigate through life changes while maintaining radiant health and happiness in their daily lives. So, Grace, you really just exemplify that. So it's really fun to see that.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to have you tell us a little bit more about your Ayurveda and yoga background and your work.
Yeah, I would love to share more. So Ayurveda, yoga, and mindfulness have been my own path of healing. And it really kind of goes back to my story, which I can share just a little piece of about why I do what I do. So when I was 5 years old, my parents got divorced. And it was really hard for me. I had a really hard time. It was like 1970. I was a total daddy's girl. It was devastating. And I remember feeling broken, like that I was somehow broken. And my mother went to work full time, raising 5 kids. And there was, it was a lot of chaos in the house. And while there was love and connection, there was an equal amount of heartache and rage that happened in our house growing up. So as I became an adult and started my own path of becoming whole and, trying to find my journey to health, it was a lot of things that influenced that, but it was yoga, Ayurveda, and mindfulness that really is the foundation for my continued healing today. So to me, those 3 things, so yoga taught me how to be still and to listen to myself. And Ayurveda taught me how to take care of myself, my physical body. So yoga and Ayurveda being sister sciences. And they say that the role of Ayurveda is to keep our physical body healthy while we pursue our more important spiritual aims through yoga. And then along the way as well, I realized that it wasn't the divorce that was so painful for me, but rather it was that neither of my parents were able to be present for both their own pain and heartache that they were going through and mine, so much less mine. So when I had kids, finally at the age of 40, after years of learning and growing and healing, it was really important to me to be present for my kids. And that's really where mindfulness came in. When I met my partner and we started having children, I also inherited 3 stepkids, which were his kids, and they were teenagers at the time, and they had their own level of woundedness. And I was feeling really super committed to being present and to being mindful. And I had no idea how triggering kids can be. Some of the words and some of the behaviors that would come out of my own mouth. And, when they were super young, it was really hard. And what I realized is that, it's a path and it's a practice, and that mindfulness is so huge because it's something that is a way of life. And for mothers, we need each other, and we need the wisdom of each other, and we need to be able to know how to slow down so that we can hear ourselves and hear our kids and respond in ways that are going to be meaningful, that are going to create meaningful connection rather than, heartache. So that's kind of how I came to this whole thing. And I've been practicing Ayurveda. I now teach at the College of Ayurveda here in Nevada City. I do that part-time. But my real passion is being with the moms. I've been leading circles of support for women and for mothers since my son was 6 months old. And I started it in my house, like in one room, and it was the community, the neighborhood mothers that I just put out on the neighborhood page, I'm starting this mindful yoga class. Does anybody want to come? And yes, they did, because we all were craving connection and meaning and like how to slow down. So the class that I lead is more of a yoga is movement. So getting that, the stress out of our body. And it's also the practice of mindfulness and poetry that I blend in, the beauty of how, and the teaching of how to be present. Because, there are definite practices that we can do throughout the day that help us over and over reconnect.
Yeah, so similar. It's interesting to see how all three of our paths have, we have so many of the similar foundations with this whole idea of radiant self-care, radical self-care too. And just this, Sheila and I, we really believe that self-care is the foundation. When mom's okay, everybody's okay. And I think that we really don't pay attention to that enough as mothers. I think we tend to be giving, and we see ourselves as these, kind of never-ending giving instead of just finding that dance, that balance between it. So I love the way you talk about that balance. And so the triggers, how the children can trigger our own things. And I was just reading my blog yesterday, and just this whole idea that, parenting is a spiritual journey. It really is, because we're going back, and a healing journey, because we're able to kind of, as we raise our own children or our stepchildren, we get to go through our own childhood again. We get to look at those wounds. We get to address it, put the focus there, and then kind of heal that inner child, that little girl within. And so I really, in everything that you were just saying, I really hear that. Then we need that practice of mindfulness. We need that practice of taking care of ourselves in movement to be able to really have that depth, to be able to address the things that our children as independent beings come up with. And, so we talk about being able to really tune in to their needs, as well as making sure that our needs are met.
You're just hit on something that is really important. And an example that I have, when my son was probably about 5 years old, and my son has a lot of fire in him. And in Ayurveda, that's a pitta, so he's like likes to kind of stir the pot and like make things happen. So there's two things I want to share about what you just said. One is the breath, and connecting to the breath is like the essence of being in the moment and mindfulness, right? And you were talking about that giving and receiving. So without the inhale, which is the receiving, we have nothing to give. And there's a quote by Rumi that says, "What is love but in the giving and the receiving?" And so it's like the breath being kind of that essence of love, but we have to take that in for ourselves first before we have anything that we can give back. So as I continue this practice of the breathing and the mindfulness, one of the things that has come up along the way that I believe I learned from Denise Roy's book, which is called Mindfulness, and it's Mothering with Mindfulness, Compassion, and Grace. But it was, my son was in the bathtub. We were having a moment, and it was one of those times where I was able to catch myself. And the words are, breathing in, I sense my heart beating. Breathing out, I sense your heart beating. How would our hearts resolve this? And so when we can like come to that kind of thought process as mothers, when we're in the moment, and recognizing that they have that agenda, like you were saying, they are their own being, and with their own, whatever expression that they need to bring to the world, then, it's a way that we can start to see it differently, a situation that might be culminating into like, a yelling fit or something that could have gone not so well. And so, yeah, just wanted to share that.
I love that. And what a simple and yet beautiful and deep practice. I mean, that just takes that inhalation, that exhalation, 2 seconds of pause,
Yes.
And then we can respond from a completely different place that instead of react from that
Right.
being triggered. So
Yes.
love
Yeah.
yes. So do you have some other, I mean, really parenting is so just full time. It never stops. It's ongoing. I joke about it's 24/7 and they still want more. Other tips and key aspects of mindfulness for,
Yes.
for the moms that are listening, because, that's a beautiful one. So
Yeah. Yes, I do. I have lots of them. It's like, where do I begin? But where I will begin is, so one of the books that I teach from, another one of the books that I teach from that I really like is John and Mila Kabat-Zinn's book, Everyday Blessings, The Inner Work of Mindful Parenting. Yeah, totally love that book. So what they present in that book are the three foundations of mindful parenting, and that is sovereignty, empathy, and acceptance. What I like to do when I teach the moms in the mom classes is we kind of take each one of those. And there was something really beautiful. So another thing you mentioned about, and something I love about your podcast, The Moms I Know, there's a saying, and whenever I get in a circle with moms, about we sit in a circle and suppose while the secret sits in the center and knows. So like the truth is here among us, but it's like it doesn't have to come necessarily from any one of us. It comes from these kinds of conversations. So I was in such a setting with the moms, and we were in circle and we were talking about sovereignty. And one of the mothers had been talking about how her New Year's resolution was around I matter, because she has like a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, and she's just she's finally kind of coming out of after the 1 year of just like giving, and that she really matters. But when we talk about sovereignty, which is the ability to accord not only the sovereignty being like the truth and the real being, like the expression of this one divine light that our kids are, and that is different from any other expression. And we have our own expression of our own divine light. And when we can recognize and accord that sovereignty to ourselves, it's more easy to accord it to our children. But so what happened in the circle is, after the first week of this I matter thing, we started talking about sovereignty, and the mantra became, coming in through the crown of my head, I matter, and coming out of my heart, you matter. So we both matter, And so I just love how these kinds of things work. But then empathy, like, the ability to really understand that this is a difficult moment that our child might be going through, whatever it might look like, a temper tantrum or something that is hard to relate to as an adult, but it's something that is really important to them. It's an emotional development that they're needing to express and to go through. So how do we hold that? And one way, that one visual that I like to use is like a sheltering tree in a thunderstorm, that, we can provide that shelter while it happens, and then we can deal with it later, So those are two things, and then acceptance being the third of the foundation of mindful parenting, that I've heard. And one of my other favorite sayings is, acceptance is the simple way to contentment. Like, accepting how things are as they are, not needing them to be a certain way.
I love that. I also love that image of the tree as the shelter. You were talking about your own story of your own childhood. And, sometimes all we need is that sheltering moment, or all we need is that empathy, and obviously that acceptance. And, I think about these human needs that we all have, to be seen, to be heard, to be accepted, to be honored. And I don't know an adult who isn't still struggling with some level of that, not getting all of those needs met. And, there's the whole range from not getting physical needs met to then these emotional needs. And so I really love this mindfulness.
Yes, absolutely. We continue to grow. I mean, every day we're changing. And the conversations like this that are ones that I want to be a part of, and I want to keep listening to, because those are the ones that make me a better person and that help me grow into the mother that I want to continue to evolve to be. It's like it's never ending.
Never ending. I just spent the past few days with my 88-year-old mother and just cherishing every moment of it.
Oh,
The journey continues, and there's so many aspects of it. So really appreciate that.
yeah.
I wanted to ask you to share a little bit more about some of the other work that you're doing as well. So you've got your circles, you've got your yoga practice, the Ayurveda.
Yeah. So in addition to that, I lead retreats. So I have an annual family yoga retreat that I lead every year in the spring, which is coming up soon on March 22nd. So we're going to be taking the spring equinox weekend to come together on the farm. We do that at Hidden Villa, which is in Los Altos Hills. And I've been doing that for 4 years now, and it's just like my favorite weekend of the year. Because it's like like-minded families that kind of drop everything and come together to be like with our kids and outside and playing and seeing the farm animals being born. And it's just such a beautiful time. So that would be another aspect. I'm also working on a group program that I'm putting together that is an Ayurveda based program for moms, and I'm thinking about just opening it up to all women. That is going to really teach about the foundations of living a radiant and healthy life on an everyday basis. So in Ayurveda, we say that it is the choices that we make on a daily basis that either set up that ultimate health and harmony, clarity and peace of mind, or that cause dis-ease in our body. So mind and spirit. So it's a holistic approach to health and wellness. And again, I think that as we need each other, that I really like working in that group setting where we get to learn from each other and we get to heal together. And then really step into the lives that we want to lead, that bring us joy and the enthusiasm and feel where we feel free and happy and radiant.
I feel as if my children and the students that I've worked with and the families that I've worked with have been my greatest teachers. I'm so blessed to be able to have worked with so many amazing people, and every single child has a message or a lesson for me. Every single adult that I come in contact with. And you talked about opening it up to women in general, not just moms. And I love that, because what I'm also finding is as I'm working with moms, there are these women that come into our lives that need that nurturing, they need that care, and they may not be mothers themselves, but they're influencing other women. They need that self-care. They need to work on the relationship piece. They need to look at simplifying their lives. They need to be looking at mindfulness and all of these sort of basic tenets of these mindful programs that we all sort of
absolutely. And as women, that is kind of, we have this innate desire to nurture, and whether it's our own kids or maybe it's animals or maybe it's someone else's kids, there is that nurturing element that we share. Yes, totally.
We're all in communication and connection with other people, and so as we work on ourselves, then we can hopefully have these wonderful connections and relationships with other people. And so I really love that you're working in these circles. So back to the retreats, though, what can you tell me about? You said it's your favorite weekend, so a retreat in contrast to sort of ongoing work. How can do you go deeper? Is it the bringing the families together? How do you weave that all together?
Yeah.
It sounds, I'd love to be able to come. And I know, unfortunately, I'm going to have to be back in Montana at that time, because I think this idea of retreat is something that we can't look at often enough, and that we can refill and we can embrace the whole journey.
Yes, totally. Well, and there's so many distractions right now in families, and technology being a huge one. And so, being able to unplug and leave the house together and go out somewhere where you don't really have a lot of responsibilities that you're managing day to day. For moms too, it's kind of hard. I mean, I'm constantly cleaning my kitchen. It feels like, there's always something to do at home. But when you can walk out of the door and just really focus on slowing down. So when we get into nature, we start to, feel into that rhythm of nature, and our biorhythms change. And so there's so much good that can be done. One of the other things I love about it is that they say that the essence of mindfulness is play. And so I hear the kids just running around, playing with each other, and we do different activities where we have nature activities that we teach the families where they can do these things together, whether they're on retreat or at home. But it's really just an opportunity for connection in a really meaningful way, and getting refreshed, and being able to spend time together and in community where we're all, kind of gearing to the same code of this slowing down and being mindful. We have a wonderful cook coming this year who's going to be making all organic, delicious, like seasonal food. And I also have another co-leader this year who is very into positive psychology and has done a lot of work in the Montessori method. And so, times together where the couples or the partners get to be together and the kids get to do their thing, and then times where they come together and get to share. So it's just, I think we need that as families right now. And so it's really important to me. I don't feel like there's enough of that kind of opportunity for us to unplug and play together.
I know we need that time. And I know, Sheila, you and your family are just my inspiration for getting unplugged and getting out in nature. So we've done episodes about being on the river and being out in nature. And one of the things that I wanted to ask, either of you too, is this, like, especially with the teenagers or the preteens, seeing how long it's taking them before they sort of can unplug and drop in. I've had a lot of parents talking to me about this idea that, it takes them a little while because they've been so dependent on these devices. And so maybe a little bit of conversation around that aspect.
Yeah. Well, I'll start. And Sheila, I'd love to hear what you have to add to that as well. I mean, I think really it's hard for all of us. It's not just the kids, but kids are so sensitive. They have so many more open channels. We kind of start to close up as we get to be adults. And, being away from the regular routine and slowing down, I mean, I think it can definitely take a while. It just, thinking of how long it can take for me to do that. But I see them like at the retreat, like once it's also a connection thing, once somebody starts playing, they just get into that play and the creativity and imagination goes wild. And that's when everything drops, the borders or the boundaries or the resistance, because we all love to play and laugh and have fun. And so then they get in the moment, and there we are together at last. So Sheila, I would love to hear what you have to say about that too.
I agree with that piece, that it's a practice. I really love what you said in the beginning, Grace. It's a path and a practice. And I think when you have expectations of your teens, of them unplugging, of them being present, because connection is the key. When you're able to connect, the technology falls away. And I think it's that lack of connection that they're searching for is the reason why they're on the screens with their friends. They do it differently. I have a friend who, when her daughter's teenager friends come over, she takes all their phones. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have never done that. But what a brilliant idea. That's an expectation set up that when you come over to this friend's house, she takes all their phones. And it's ideas like that from other moms, that like, yeah, that's one I want to bring in, because for me, what I dislike about my own kind of parenting piece is the constant policing of the cell phone, of the constant. I know they feel the disappointment sometimes that I have, that they're still on their phone, and yet I hear the disappointment when I'm still on my phone. Right? I mean, it goes both ways. So I think like what we're doing right now, it's keeping up the conversation and constantly being aware that really, what does it always come back down to is connection.
And sharing these stories so we can hear of these courageous women who are making that taking that stand, or in hearing other ideas of what other moms are doing and how are they integrating these things. And so, yeah,
Absolutely. It really keeps you motivated and
Yeah.
inspired, because it's so easy to just throw in the towel and say, forget it, and like give in. But we can't do that. When we're feeling passionate, and remember that it is important to keep doing what we're doing, there's a reason for it. I appreciate being in this company, because it's just super inspiring and motivating to remember.
Well, yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, just with this interview, it's my first time meeting you, Grace. I'm just like, already I'm writing down my own notes, just about the mindfulness, about the breathing and coming back to that. It's like, I so appreciate that. Thank you. And that's the whole piece. It's like conscious parenting, conscious mothering, conscious being.
Yes. Yes.
So, so these are why we have these conversations, why we talk about the connection being so important. And when we can drop in with our children and get out into nature, when we can have these conversations, when we can sit around the dinner table and be in community together, when we can have these retreats. And so it's really exciting to see what we're all creating. And then Grace, back to you on this idea of creating it over a 3-day period where people can really work on the tools. I love that idea. And so whether it's listening to podcasts, or whether it's going to a weekly mama group or a monthly mothering group, or whether we do things online, and that's a piece that's been, new for me, but this idea of reaching out in different ways when we can't be in person.
Yes.
Nothing takes the place of that in person. But
yes.
when we can't have that we can utilize this technology, which can be so challenging for us, but also we can
Absolutely.
The positive ways of somehow reaching out in other ways and getting these messages and hearing these things that are happening. And so with the podcast, it's this idea that, busy mothers hopefully have a little time to listen, where they're just listening and it's not a screen, and they can get some idea, they can get some refreshment and some nurturing, but then nothing takes that place of that in person. And so the retreats are just so lovely. So I wish I could be there. You shared that beautiful quote at the beginning. Thank you so much for that. Is there another mantra or guiding principle that you live your life by?
There is. So I would say, and it's really funny, it's a book that I got when my kids were really small, and it's a book that I never read. But I didn't have to, because the title says it all. And that is, above all, be kind. That is my guiding mantra. And I think as moms and on this mindfulness path, that once we can truly be kind and compassionate to ourselves and let that guide us, then half the battle's over, like the more just forgiveness and acceptance and love that we bring to ourselves, that harmony and healing that happens within, and we can give to others, and teaching our children, above all, be kind.
I love that. Thank you so much. Beautiful. That was interesting. Those were my mother's words just last week as well. We can't have too much of that, especially in these very challenging times. So I would imagine that our listeners are going to want to know how they can find out more about you, how they can get a hold of you. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
I would love to. So my website, it would probably be the best place, and that's mindfulmamayoga.com. So it's mindfulmama yoga.com.
Beautiful. And then a little bit more about the retreat. If there are people who have, some free time in March and are inspired to bring their family on the retreat, do you still have space?
We do. We have some space available. And it's going to be at Hidden Villa, March 22nd to the 24th. And our whole theme is going to be around the awakening of spring. And we're going to be doing some ritual, which you were an inspiration around that, Maria, around the ritual piece of it that we'll be doing. And lots of themes around planting intention for our family and for, communication and movement. And so if any of the listeners are available, please check out my website. There's a page that says this for Family Yoga Retreat, and you can get more information there. You can also reach out to me at grace@mindfulmamayoga.com.
Lovely. And for listeners that are catching this episode down the line, we're talking about March 22nd through 24th, 2019. But
Right.
if it's after the fact, then you do these retreats yearly.
Yes,
And
I do.
I know Sheila and I have been talking about some retreats, and also I've been talking with some people in Montana about, so this whole idea of mindful or conscious parenting and this idea of retreats and getting out in nature with our families is just very exciting to me. And I love the theme of this spring.
Yeah.
Grace, thank you so much for being with us today. So many wonderful nuggets of information and inspiration and practical tips that we can use as mothers, as women, as grandmothers, as friends, and that we can go out into the world. So we just really appreciate your being here today with us.
I am so honored to be with you both. Thank you so much for having me.
I'll look forward to seeing you soon. And in the meantime, to all of you listeners out there, have a wonderful week, and we will see you soon or hear you soon on The Moms I Know. Take care.
Thanks for joining us today for The Moms I Know. To learn more about Sheila and her online program, The Mom Map, visit purplebeetnutrition.com. For Maria's monthly blog and to learn more about her group programs and retreats, visit soquelessentials.com. That's SOQUEL essentials.com. We hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Moms I Know. Until next week, have a joyful family journey.